while, we have said that Barcelona have one or two moves left, or I was proud of them for getting all their business done, it seems like they're still an incomplete team. And I think that's the Domagoj, the most frustrating and deflating part of it is that even the bench, when Frankie de Jong and Ansu Fati came off, we saw Nico leave on loan, so he's out of the picture. But by and large, the players that came off the bench are basically Xavi's best 14, 15 players. I mean, that's who this team is going to be this season, barring one or two additional signings, with the exception of Bernardo Silva, who will throw a monkey wrench into all of that, and Frankie de Jong's departure, if he does go the other, not the other direction, but in a different direction. So, you're left with this team that, by and large, you expected to come out and get a result. But a lot of credit, I think, where we begin this, and I think a lot of people are going to immediately tune out, is a lot of credit is due to Rayo Vallecano setting up in that 4-4-2, the medium block, and they solved the puzzle that they solved twice last year that Barcelona presented. And even with enhanced talent, it seemed like the same issues that Barca had against Rayo last year continue to be the same this year.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it's not just Rayo either. It's just I feel like with Barcelona, if you successfully shut down the middle of the park, you close those lanes that go to Busquets, that go to the interiors, that you solve more than half the issue against Barca. You can just send them out wide, and then they'll kind of panic and try and do the same thing over and over again. Which, if it doesn't work, obviously you need to shake the things up and change something. But oftentimes it happens that Barca come in with a plan, and if that initial plan doesn't work, they just keep banging their head against the wall. They just keep trying the same thing, and if it's clear not working, you need to change things up. And I feel like Xavi hasn't really done that just yet. And this team on paper is a really good team. I mean, this summer has been very strange, I would say. It's been exciting, of course, with all the money being spent and just Barca being able to spend money in the first place, I guess. But it will take time for those players to click. Of course, that's also one of the factors that we have to take into consideration. But yes, credit to Rayo. They have solved the puzzle. Their block was really well organized. They were very compact in the middle, and they used their the middle block well to just keep Busquets kind of shut down, and they used the cover shot as well. They at times there was one player covering two Barca players, and Barca just couldn't create those superiorities that Xavi keeps talking about. He keeps talking about having the numbers, having the movement to exploit the space. But Rayo moved so well to keep our players at the cover shadow, to keep the passing lanes blocked, or rather just preventing those passing lanes from even ever being created. So that's how you play against Barca. You just suffocate their options down the middle. And I feel like at that point, you need a bit of magic, I guess. You need to come up with a different formula other than give the ball to Dembele, give the ball to Rafinha, and just hope they do something. It used to be Messi in that role. When Barca was struggling, we just give the ball to Messi. He will do something out of nothing, and suddenly you're 1-0 up. And I feel like Barca, if they don't get that initial goal, especially early on, they get nervous, they get frustrated, they start to panic. And once that happens, everything just goes out the window. And I feel like Xavi himself, being relatively new to this high level stage, I feel like he panics as well a bit, and just throws the attackers onto the field, just makes changes that maybe are not necessarily for the best. Although I feel like Frankie de Jong, for example, he did change the game. Ansu Fati, of course, those are the changes that I welcome. But at the same time, it feels like we panicked a bit, and once we start panicking, and once we stop thinking, I would say, that's where everything goes kind of sideways.
Well, I think where that begins, and you talked about give the ball to Messi and see what happens, and I felt like against Rayo, Barca's fullbacks in particular were giving the ball to Dembele and Rafinha and saying, "Hey, go forward and see what happens." And when those two players, as we saw in the preseason, and I think people are immediately brought up, the level of intensity in the preseason is a lot different than when it comes to a Liga match for a team ready to go against Barcelona with that game plan, who spent weeks preparing for Barcelona, and knowing, not say that, I think Rafinha was immediately kind of discarded by some in saying that he always wants to get onto his left foot, which is true, but he also did that with quite a lot of regularity. So it wasn't necessarily a concern for me because he has the ability to get on his left foot as much as he needs to or wants to. And then on the other side, I mean, if he had just been a little tidier in his finishing, then we would be having a different conversation. And a lot of this is too, that if Barca had won 2-0 or 1-0 against Rayo, if one of those shots from, if the one from Lewandowski goes in, if the 2 from or 3 from Rafinha go in, if the one from Dembele goes in, then it's again a different conversation. But I think what we really need to focus on here, the big conversation, is certainly the fullback experiment. And I still call it experiment because I think Xavi is stuck between two minds of Ronald Araujo, and we're seeing that play out. Now, I don't know how Jules Koundé fits into this solution, if you will, but clearly for the Araujo right back experiment is about his development. And I think it's very difficult to judge Araujo based on just the performance against Rayo Vallecano, because we're trying to figure out what he's, or can he do the job that Xavi needs him to do at right back, therefore he can move back to center back, right? Like, it's like he has to cross his threshold, this Rubicon, to earn his minutes back at center back. And for Alba, the concern with me, and it seems like some within the club agree with this, that he had kind of a bleh preseason, and I discarded it because it's Jordi Alba. We've seen him in Copa del Rey matches, in La Liga matches, at Hadafe on the road, or at name insert relegated team here on the road, going in second gear, and then he picks it up when he needs to, with the exception of the big matches where he doesn't seem to get to the level. But everywhere in the middle, Jordi Alba is fantastic. And it seems like for this one, he wasn't ready for it, and he wasn't ready for the preseason matches, and that is concerning. And it feels like for him, the club is already preparing. Well, if you have one plus 30, who knows what they're going to give us fullback in Jordi Alba, let's bring another one in Marcos Alonso, and maybe throughout the course of the season, one of the two can figure things out. But with Alba's standing as a captain in the team, and its position as not a sacred cow, but as an important player that has been an influential and significant player on that left side, especially when they try to overload the left side attack. And he has been so important to what Barca are always doing, to not have that outlet on the left side when you're staying strong siding, to go to try to create that numerical advantage to reverse the field with diagonal ball, creates problems on your right side as well. And then with Araujo, it was just give the ball to Rafinha or Dembele in front of him and see what would happen here. And so, I think those who were complaining about the fullbacks all season long, I think last season and the transfer window, I think they've all been vindicated, because even though Bernardo Silva might be on the way, Bernardo Silva doesn't solve your right back issues. Like, can Frankie de Jong play right back? Is that what we're asking if Bernardo Silva comes in? I say that in jest, of course, but
it's a possibility. I've seen people discuss that both with Frankie and with Nico as well. I think both have those progressive routes. They have that straight line running power, and people are like, well, let's just put Frankie de Jong on the right back. He might do the job. And you know what? Maybe he could, but that's a topic for another time, I guess. Fullbacks. I feel like as much as we talk about this, and we always keep getting back to it, not just this podcast, but in general, of Coolers, it always seems to be the fullback problem. And to me, it's kind of strange, because we've spent so much money this transfer window, and granted, yes, we've made the team stronger, obviously, and patched up some areas that need to be patched up, and all that's fine. But now we're talking about potentially investing another 70 to even 100 million to Bernardo Silva, who, okay, yes, he's a quality player. We all know that he would elevate this team, probably, yes. But at the same time, how do you leave the fullback areas for last? And apparently we're going to spend 10 million euros or 20 million euros for a new right back or something. And for that kind of money, who can you realistically get? We've saw the list, right? That leaked yesterday or something. It's not really an impressive list. And to be fair,
don't worry. Can we go through that list before we move on?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's do it. Those apparent right back options, because it seems like Dest, and the concern when Xavi came in with Dest was going to be that positional play. The concern with Dest coming to Barcelona when he was 19 years old was always going to be that positional play. And it seems like he's not progressed the way that Xavi wants in any way. And even some of the other options that are similar to him in a Hector Bellerin, who was at Real Betis and Arsenal, it seemed like Barcelona have thrown that one out as well. So it seems like the short list here is Jeremy Frimpong, a 21-year-old former Man City youth player who came up through their system. He's a Dutch right back. I'd actually call him a wing back of anything I've seen of him. I haven't seen much of him. I saw maybe a match or two with him at Celtic, where he was figuring things out. Again, he was, I think, 19 when he made that move. Then he moves to Bayer Leverkusen in January of 2021. I've probably seen him once there. Just seems like he really needs to get forward, a speedy, wide right back. Again, 21 years old. And then the other choices here, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the 24-year-old Crystal Palace product signed by Man U for 50 million euros back in 2019, signed by Man U. He's made 125 appearances in 3 years, but currently this season he's out of the team to start the season. I think not to minimize his game or to simplify it too much, but he does not get forward. He is very astute defensively, but he brings you nothing going forward in any way. And then you have Diego Dalot, the 23-year-old from Porto, Man United. Again, for him, 20 million back in 2018 when he was still a teenager. And I actually was surprised by this. He was still only 23 years old. I feel like Dalot has been on I've heard about him for years and years and years. And then the two likely candidates, if you will, the ones that are highest on the queue, it seems like, is Thomas Meunier, the 30-year-old. Again, another guy. I was like, oh, he's only 30. From Bruges, rather, PSG and Dortmund, where he spent the last 10 years, for 10 to 12 million euros in there. And then it seems like the favorite is Juan Foyth, the 24-year-old right back, 25 million euros from Villarreal seems to be his price tag. And with Foyth being we'll say the favorite here, I did some deep diving on this. I would, as far as looking at the numbers here, because I watched Villarreal's game against Real Valladolid from from Saturday, and trying to figure out, I've seen him before, and I think his performance with Argentina is his ceiling, certainly, of what we saw with him, especially the Copa America. And then in La Liga, it's hot and cold. He was really good in the Europa League as well last season, in the Champions League. Sorry, Villarreal, in the Champions League last year. But the idea that his passing is so much better than Araujo's was a question that I was kind of wondering, right? Like, because it seems like his position he is a right back, but he is not a go forward right back. He is a stationary right center back, if anything. And looking at from last season in the Liga in particular, the progressive distance of passing was Araujo in favor of Foyth, 88,608 total to 7,200, with Meunier being at 6,500. As far as passing completion, Araujo was at 95%, Foyth was at 90%. As far as total distance on passes, Araujo was at 31,000, Foyth was at 18,000. With similar numbers. As far as long passing, Araujo was 74% on all passes that broke at least 2 lines, and he completed 240 of those passes. Foyth, 69%, completed just 97 of those passes. So while I do agree, the eye test tells me that Foyth is much more important going forward than Ronald Araujo is. I mean, in particular on his the pass types, rather, under pressure. Foyth, and that's the eye test too, that I thought that Foyth was better under pressure than Araujo, and he is. That is clear. His passes under pressure, 183 against a press. Araujo had just 138, where Araujo does make the safe pass more often than Foyth does. Foyth fails by trying to go forward in a way that Araujo doesn't. But again, Araujo's passing, and this has to do with, I think, Barcelona's quality a little bit. But again, Villarreal last season, you could argue, was not that far behind Barcelona in terms of their build-up play and their ability on the ball. When I read you those stats, I feel like those stats kind of back up some of the ideas I had, that Foyth, while he does things better than Araujo, certainly, I don't certainly think he's the answer in any way for 25 million euros.
Yes, I would agree with that. The first thing that strikes me when I see that list is it's a weird list. It's there's some weird names there, some wing backs, some defensive right backs, and it all depends on the type of player that Xavi actually wants, the profile of the player. And of course, it depends on who he sees as the starting right winger as well, because that also affects the role of the right back who's behind him. Because do we need a supportive right back? Do we need someone who's more of a link up type of player, someone who's combinatory in their play, someone who doesn't necessarily overlap but can just stay in support, like an inverted right back? Because that was the initial idea. And I was scouting for right backs. It was a couple of months ago as well, and in my mind, Xavi was looking for someone who can invert, someone in the Dani Alves mold, someone I was hoping that Dest would eventually become, because that was, in my mind, Dest's ceiling was higher as an inverted right back than someone who was a marauding right back who would overlap like Alba, for example. So it all depends on what Xavi wants here, because Juan Foyth is a tidy footballer. He's an intelligent footballer. His work rate is high. He's good defensively as well. So all that is good. But is he someone who's a game changer, who's a ceiling raiser? I don't think so. And to be fair, with the money that we have left for signing a fullback, you cannot really expect someone world class, I would say. And I've even seen reports that Foyth is the perfect profile for Xavi's system, and I'm not sure if that is true, because if he is, then Xavi has something entirely different in mind that I thought that he would do at the beginning of the season. And then there were some reports that said that he wants a highly aggressive, attacking young fullback, but Foyth is not exactly that either. So I don't really understand how those names, especially with Bissaka as well, how did those names get on that list? It's kind of strange to me, because if we want someone who's highly attacking, those names just don't fit the bill, right? And then we have Koundé, who theoretically could do a better job than Araujo can. He's much more comfortable on the ball. Defensively, they're both solid, so you get that part, that box ticked. So I guess Koundé would be, on paper at least, in theory, he would be my choice. If we don't sign someone who is going to be a starting right back, then I think Koundé could be the one going forward, and then Araujo slots back into the center back position where he thrives when he's much better, obviously. But yeah, as far as that shortlist is concerned, I'm not really sure. I'm not that impressed with the names, because the profiles just don't seem to click with me. That's those players may have quality, but they don't have the quality in the areas that Barca would need. Right. I feel like.
Yeah, and I feel like Xavi now is kind of pushing up against this. I originally said from the first day he arrived, with that 3-4-3 seems to be the way that Xavi wanted to go, with the three center backs, and he's kind of shut that down. He's really put some cold water on that whatever flame that existed of a 3-4-3, but yet that's the squad he has. Like, looking up and down the center back depth, that to get Araujo and Eric Garcia and Koundé and Christensen on the field all at the same time, Gerard Piqué be darned, you have to basically play three at the back. You have four center backs to be able to, who I think give you more than your options at right back. And truly, the frustrating thing is that the perfect right back for Xavi's system is Sergio Roberto, if he was better at every one of his skills, right? Because he can do everything that Xavi wants him to do. He does it right at an average rate. He does it at a, barely above average rate. And so Sergio Roberto is not the answer. I mean, when he came on the field along with Frankie de Jong and Ansu Fati, his chemistry with Dembele was awful.
Yeah, awful.
Clearly looked like they had not had enough reps together, but they've been teammates for 5 years. Though, interestingly enough, I did not do the math on this, but I can't imagine they've been on the field very long together.
No, I don't think so. No.
Right. Roberto was injured last year when Dembele was finally on the field. And even in 2019, when Dembele had a little string of games there, Roberto was also injured at the same time there. So it's possible that those two have shared the field for like less than 30 or 40 appearances together. And at the time, Dembele was playing on the left a lot of that time because Messi was over on the right. So yeah, their chemistry was not great, Roberto and Dembele, to say it, to put it mildly. And then to me, Dest and Dembele have always had good chemistry. Believe it or not, I think the two of them have worked well together. Again, that's just me in the eye test. And then Dest has always struggled with anybody else in front of him. And Xavi in training could maybe be seeing that, hey, if I want Rafinha to really be the starting right winger and Dembele starting on the left usually, then I need Dest to work well with Rafinha, and maybe that's not happening. And that's a death sentence for Dembele, for Dest. And it also could be monetary, that if Barca think that they can bring in, Meunier for 10 to 12 million and they can sell Dest for 25 to 30 million, then that's business. That's 20 million euros that they're pocketing to, in their belief, enhance the squad in a better way in Bernardo Silva, or more importantly, register Bernardo Silva, right? Because one thing you go buy him, but it's another thing, especially if Aubameyang's sale is kind of being forced to register Koundé, that's selling Dest and kind of just putting a stopgap there in it, right? Because I think at this point, Xavi's saying, well, I think one of these, we'll say uninspiring names, which we agree, one of these uninspiring names is still for a third of the price better than Dest. So get this kid out of here. He's not going to fit. It's not going to work in the future. And I think that's a bit frustrating because, I think we've seen Eric Garcia improve, and I want to credit Xavi for some of that. And for Dest to kind of have, it doesn't work out for everybody. So for him to be given up on in this way, it is frustrating because he is still, he is 22 now. So now you're speaking about he has been in Barca for 2.5 seasons, and, it's kind of now or never.